How's it going, everyone? It is I, Anime Outlet, and this is part 5 of What If Deku Was One Punch Man. And now, let's begin. As Izuku's falling through the portal, the teachers rush out to go look and see if everything's okay. Well, for once they arrive, they just see Izuku standing there completely fine, like nothing ever happened. As he's standing there, they ask him what happened, to which Izuku just responds, "Oh, I'm guessing you all figured out that I got just kidnapped by one of those Nomu things. It just took me to the villain hideout. Luckily, I was able to map where it was, as I was watching the streets as it flew on, dragging me throughout the city, till it ended up dropping me off at some random warehouse at the edge of it." Izuku would say, "It also happened to me all for one," but he sounded weak, and he even said that he was too weak to fight me right now. So I have a feeling if we attack as soon as possible, that we'd be able to defeat him as quickly and smoothly as possible, allowing for many more victims of All for One to not be injured or hurt anymore," Izuku would say, as the teachers would nod their heads. So Izuku would be brought into a conference room, as they would all sit down with Izuku at the head of it. "So, I was at here," Izuku would say, pointing at a map where the exact alleyway was where he captured Stain. Then, all of a sudden, a Nomu came out of nowhere and flew down, picking me up. So, it picked me up and flew me down this way, crossed this street, and then took 3 left turns, and then it flew down 3 miles down the street, and then I ended up at this just warehouse, as you could say, pointing at the warehouse on the map. It was right here, Izuku pointing to it, as many of them would nod. But we don't have any reason, and we definitely shouldn't just push in just without anything. We need to prepare more for this. Plus, you, along with the rest of the students, are going to taking final exams. You still technically are learning here at UA. You may be sort of a teacher helper, but you still have to do all the assignments, since you still need to learn. Sure, you're smart as a hero, but you still have to take all the tests, Izuku, even though you've already passed any of the more advanced ones. But anyway, I say we finish the UA just finals, and then do all of that stuff, and then we go and fight him. Because right now we need to start preparing up a force. Because if we just go in there, just weapons blazing, we're going to end up getting caught off guard, most likely. Because Izuku, they know you know the exact location of their warehouse, meaning they're going to most likely prepare for something like a full-on head-on attack. Izuku would nod his head, agreeing with Nezu, as he and the rest of the heroes there then just leave the conference room, as Nezu would be sitting there in the dark, just left with his own thoughts. This year has gotten to be quite interesting so far. Hopefully nothing too bad ends up happening for this onslaught, Nezu would say, as weeks would end up passing, as when all of the students would come in, they would hear that it was final exam day. And even though Izuku was a teacher's aide and had been helping them just with all sorts of training, Izuku still had to learn. He still had his seat in the class. However, Shinso, who moved up to Class 1A, had his seat in the back, not taking Izuku's exact seat. Sure, Izuku may be helping people, but he's still not someone who's graduated high school smart. That's why he's still learning. If he was, then he probably wouldn't even be still in UA, likely being a teacher. So with that, the finals would begin, as all of them would go and put their hero costumes on. Shinso, who had only been in the class for around a couple weeks, had had his finals pushed back just a couple of months, so he could get some extra training and learning in before he were to face off. They didn't want someone who was severely inexperienced to just jump in right into the deep end without learning how to swim first, basically. So they would all do that, as Izuku would read up on the board that he was the last match, for they were going to be doing teams of 2 against one of the heroes at UA, and Izuku just so happened to be up against All Might, which Izuku would smile about. I guess I'm facing All Might. Maybe people will finally realize how strong I really am from this, Izuku would say. As Izuku would walk up to Nezu, who was sitting down just waiting for all of the students to arrive after being changed into their hero costumes. Nezu, do you think you could happen to record my fight with All Might? I want the word to get out about how strong I really am. How a quirkless person can get so strong. Nezu would look at Izuku just questioningly. Are you really sure about this, Izuku? Izuku would nod his head, showing that he was definitely sure about what he was going to do. As Izuku would end up walking over towards Bakugo, he would end up putting a hand on his shoulder. Bakugo would shove Izuku's hand off. Bakugo, you have to realize something. You aren't going to ever be as strong as I will. I'm not trying to say this to piss you off. I'm saying it to try to get it through your thick skull of yours, Bakugo. You're never going to be a true hero if you live your life trying to chase after a dream that's never going to come true. It's just not going to happen. Right now you're in denial, Bakugo, saying that you are stronger than me, that you will become stronger than the #1 hero. But deep down you know, because I'm standing in your way, you're not going to. You need to stop focusing on such idiotic dreams and ambitions when you could be learning how to use teamwork better than what you already have done. Your teamwork skills are severely lacking, Bakugo, and without them, you're not going to become the true hero that you could be with teamwork. Izuku would say this before walking off, as all of the students would end up arriving and taking their test. As finally, it was time for Izuku and Bakugo to face off against All Might. As they would be stretching, they would then be pushed into a city, as All Might would then be released. He was forced to put weights on his body so that he wasn't to go full out and possibly injure one of the students. So Izuku would tell Bakugo to stay behind, as he'll scout out from the rooftops and possibly look to where All Might was. Bakugo would agree to this, as Izuku would jump up onto the rooftops looking for All Might. The only reason Bakugo agreed to this was to think about everything Izuku had said to him. It just didn't make sense to him. How could someone that just never said anything dumb to him all of a sudden just change with the flick of a finger? It just didn't make any sense at all. However, all of a sudden he would see the flying body of Izuku slam into the building next to him. As Bakugo would look on in shock, Izuku would grab some of the rubble and push himself up without a scratch on his body. His hero costume, though, had been left in just ruins, as his shorts and t-shirt just looked to have many holes in it, thanks to being cut from all of the different types of materials and rubble that Izuku had been slammed into. As moments before, Izuku was standing up on a rooftop looking for All Might, as all of a sudden a flying fist would come in and land contact right with Izuku's stomach, sending him flying back the other way towards Bakugo. As Izuku would stand up like nothing ever happened, Bakugo would look on to see the flying All Might come crashing down towards him. However, before All Might could make contact with Bakugo, Izuku would rush in, slamming his elbow into All Might's stomach, while also using his other hand to push Bakugo the other way. Bakugo, try to get his back, him from the behind. If I can hold him here, he's not going to be able to move. That leaves it wide open for you to attack him, Izuku would say as Bakugo would nod his head, rushing over, grabbing one of the side walls before exploding off, using that to push his momentum forward, as Bakugo would reach out with both of his hands, slamming them down into All Might's back before sending a massive explosion into it. As Izuku would let go, as All Might would be sent flying down into the ground, slamming his body into it, laying on his stomach, as Bakugo would slam his foot down into slamming his foot down into All Might, putting his hand onto All Might's head. So who's the weak one now, All Might? However, the arrogant Bakugo hadn't realized that All Might was merely just pretending to be hurt and on the ground, as he would stand up, launching Bakugo off of him into another building. As Bakugo would get up out of out of the tiny hole that he had broken through the side of the building, as All Might would rush over, knocking Izuku to the side, trying to. However, Izuku would dodge right over All Might's fist, as All Might would continue on going towards Bakugo before grabbing him by the head and throwing him on towards Izuku. As many of the students would watch in horror, seeing that All Might looked to just be mercilessly just attacking both of Izuku and Bakugo, as many people would just think, I thought Izuku was strong. Is this really the true power of All Might? Has he just been faking how strong he's been this entire time? Many of the students would ask these questions, however, all of the questions they asked would be false. All the answers to it was merely doing this, as Izuku was merely just playing with All Might's mind, making it look like he was weak, however he wasn't. So this would be happening, Izuku grabbing onto Bakugo before setting Bakugo's limp body down, as Bakugo would try to get up, however Izuku would stop him. Bakugo, you're already injured. If you try to get up and fight anymore, you're going to get injured even further, and that's not going to be good. If you get injured too much, you possibly might have to leave the hero program. This is All Might we're talking about, Bakugo. Listen to me. Bakugo would sadly have to tap out, saying, fine. You better not lose this damn fight, Deku, Bakugo would say. Izuku would just sort of laugh. Oh, I won't, Izuku would say, standing up, looking directly on towards All Might, glaring directly into All Might's view of sight, before stepping one step before launching his body completely on towards All Might, winding one of his fists back before slamming his fist into All Might's stomach, as All Might would feel the true power of this blow, as he would be sent flying backwards, much like Izuku had when All Might had punched him in the stomach, as he would be sent flying through 3 buildings before finally coming to a stop right up against a dumpster, as All Might's body would lay there. He would groan in pain before barely being able to get up. His entire body was in pain, just aching. The pain was pulsing, just like a headache, as All Might would stumbly get from where he was, as the entire class watching over some of the cameras would look on in shock. Izuku punched him, and the punch didn't even seem like a true full-powered punch from Izuku. The punch had nearly sent him through 3 buildings. All Might was barely even walking. One punch from Izuku had basically managed to defeat All Might, the #1 hero. This just didn't make any sense to any of Izuku's classmates at all. How could All Might be so weak? As they had all imagined, Izuku wasn't truly as much powerful as he said he was, all just because of the simple fact he was quirkless. As many of their views shifted, thinking, oh, well, I could beat All Might, right? For many of them severely underestimating how Izuku was, even after seeing his countless fights winning with just ease. As All Might would get up, Izuku would rush towards him before getting out the handcuffs and placing them on the weak All Might's arms, as All Might would then just sort of laugh in pain. Well, I guess you won, Izuku. As All Might would end up falling backwards, completely unconscious, as his body would then have a puff of smoke come out of nowhere, transforming back into Skelly Might. However, Nezu would cut the cameras off along with the recording as soon as he saw the smoke. Well, that does it. So, that completes the finals. There's been a select few of you that may have had a teammate pass, but since you all didn't make it and had the teamwork, or your teammate do all the work, you all are going to fail as well. That also goes for Katsuki Bakugo. However, he did show a level of growth of teamwork since a couple of days ago, so I'm rather surprised. Anyway, now you all may go home. You all have a week to prepare for the summer training camp that we are going to be going to. I'm not going to tell you the location, but we're going to be there for a month and a half, so make sure you bring quite a lot of clothes, as he would say, as all of the students would nod their heads before going off to the mall, where they would end up just searching for all the supplies, and Nezu had told them to, and many of them would also buy extra pairs of clothing so that they could just have it up there when they were up in the mountains, presumably. So with that, Izuku would sit down, just staring off at all of the people walking around throughout the mall and shopping, as a hooded figure would end up stepping down and sitting right next to him. Ah, Izuku Midoriya, it appears we meet again. the figure would say, as Izuku would just sort of laugh. You know, oh Shigaraki, I do have a pro hero license, so I could capture you right now. But what would be the fun in that? Izuku would say, staring off towards Shigaraki, before Izuku would reach out his hand, presumably trying to grab Shigaraki's neck. However, before long, the shadowy figure would just disperse, like it had never been there in the first place. As Izuku would open his hand, all he found was just a puff of smoke, as it would then fly off, disappearing in the distance. As Izuku would just sort of laugh to himself. I guess it was just an illusion, huh? And that is where part 5 of What If Deku Was One Punch Man is going to be left off. I'm sorry this video was quite short, and it's not the normal 30-minute video. But yeah, I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.